Going to use the paint reveal effect to reveal the letter S. Let's make it a bit bigger. Okay, so I have the letter S, and what I want to do is I want to create brush strokes that are going to work to cover over the shape of the S, and then I'm going to use the Stencil Alpha effect to effectively look like the S is kind of drawing itself on screen. Now, to do that, I'm going to need two versions of my S layer. One is going to be the original S piece of text that's going to be revealed, and the other one is a duplicate that I'm going to use as a layer that I can paint on. I'm using a duplicate as opposed to a solid because I need to be able to trace the shape of the S and then get rid of that S so that all I'm left with is the paint stroke that describes that shape of the letter. So to do that, I'll duplicate my S. Now, what we know about paintbrushes is that they don't allow you to paint directly onto the composition window. So I can't just paint on my piece of text. And if I were to double click this to try and open it up as its own layer, you'll see that it just becomes editable. Now there's another kind of intermediate step that I need to take here to turn this from an editable piece of text into something that I can open as a layer. Now, I know it is a layer, but it's just a little bit different than the usual kind of JPEG solids and those kind of layers. But it's fairly straightforward. All I need to do is right-click and pre-compose. So I'm pre-comping my S, wrapping it up in its own composition. So where I had the S, now I have a composition that contains the S. Now, because I've pre-comped the S, it now allows me to right-click and open layer. So this gives me a layer view of my composition, and you can see it here, layer S2 comp 1. By doing this, it allows me to access the brush tool, and the brush tool is going to allow me to paint onto that S to be used as a Stencil Alpha effect. So I'll just up the diameter of my brush slightly so that it covers the S, and I'm going to make sure that the duration is set to right on. Now from here, all I need to do is start painting over the letter S. Now it's going to record the movement of the paint stroke, but it's not going to necessarily do it in real time. It is going to map the exact duration of going from here to here, but if I slow down here or speed up here, it's not going to track those different varying speeds. So this allows me to be as careful as I want. I can slow down on the difficult parts and speed up on the easy parts, and then I can go back afterwards and I can adjust the overall duration of my paint stroke. So I'll start painting, and I'm going to go nice and slowly so I don't miss a bit, because if I miss a bit I'm going to have to go back to the start. Okay. Now, again, it looks like it's gone, but it in fact just hasn't started to animate yet, and I can see that the animation is fine. Now, the next thing I can do is adjust the overall duration of the paint stroke by going into the Effects, Paint, Brush 1, Stroke options. So it's quite deep there in the effects properties, and you'll see that there's a property here called end. So that means that the end of the brush stroke happens at this duration on the timeline. So I can get that, and I can pull that back to 2 seconds, and you'll see that it will happen, instead of the 16 seconds, it will happen very quickly in 2 seconds. So the timing is adjusted when you're using the right on effect as or through the end property in stroke options in your brush in the paint effect. Now the next thing I need to change is the paint on transparent. And what this is going to do is it's going to look at the layer that I'm painting on, and it's going to get rid of all of the pixels that I've used to trace, so that I'm left with just the brush stroke. So you'll see that the S will disappear and the brush stroke will remain. I'll close my pre-comp layer and I'll go back into my composition view, and you'll see that I have the paint stroke visible on this layer, but when I change that from normal to stencil alpha, you'll see that it instead only works with the transparency and opacity of this layer and transfers it down onto this layer. And you can see that it does a good job there of animating the S onto the screen. Now, just to finish up, there is another thing that you need to know when you're working with this effect, and that is that if I get another graphic, for example, and I say, okay, I want this S to animate and I want it to sit on top of TV Studio bitmap, and if I put that down on the bottom of the layer stack under S, you'll see that it looks a little bit odd. And you'll actually notice that what's happening is that the S paint stroke is in fact painting on or revealing that JPEG as well. So how do you restrict that stencil alpha effect to only apply to the S layer and not the JPEG? Again, pre-comping is the solution. So pre-comping can get you out of many situations, it solves many problems, and this is one such example. So if I select the layer doing the revealing and the layer being revealed, right click, pre-compose, and I'll give it a name, restrict stencil to S, just to make it pretty obvious what this is doing. Click OK. You'll see that it now only applies that to the S because they've been locked away in another composition. TV Studio bitmap is sitting out on its own, pretty much minding its own business. And that is the stencil alpha on a piece of text.